Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The FAA is cutting flights at 40 airports, which could go up to 20% of flights. SCOTUS ruled that passports shall contain people's sex at birth. Joint Base Andrews was hit with a package containing mysterious powder, and Trump has a backup plan for tariffs. Okay, let's get into it. Today, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer proposed a new plan to end the record-breaking federal government shutdown before another vote on the Republican-backed bill to reopen the government. Schumer said the government could reopen within a few hours if Republicans accept the Democratic proposal.
Therefore, we'd like to offer a simple proposal that would reopen the government and extend the ACA premium tax credits simultaneously, and then have the opportunity to start negotiating longer-term solutions to health care costs. Let's do all three. I've spoken with my caucus, and Democrats are offering a very simple compromise. Democrats are ready to clear the way to quickly pass a government funding bill that includes health care affordability. Leader Thune just needs to add a clean one-year extension of the ACA tax credits to the CR so that we can immediately address rising health care costs.
Even though premium tax credits do expire at the end of the year, there was still little sense of a buy-in from the majority leader. Republicans rejected the offer, with Majority Leader John Thune calling it a non-starter that doesn't even come close. Thune said that they should vote to reopen the government first, since there's already a plan for that, and then talk about health care afterwards. Thune told reporters after a fiery floor speech that the Senate would roll into the weekend in order to try and reach a compromise with Democrats to end the shutdown. Meanwhile, the shutdown continues to affect more aspects of Americans' daily life. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, said that it was cutting flights at 40 high-volume airports starting today to ensure air travel remains safe. This happened because unpaid air traffic controllers show signs of fatigue during the federal government shutdown. Yesterday evening, the FAA released an emergency order that it is implementing a 4% reduction in flight travel at the 40 airports starting today. The agency will increase the rate to 6% on November 11th, then 8% on November 13th, and finally to 10% on November 14th. The operation reduction will occur between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. at each airport. The affected airports include Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta, which is the world's busiest airport by total traffic. Other airports affected are John F. Kennedy International Airport, Miami International Airport, LaGuardia Airport, Chicago O'Hara International Airport, and Newark Liberty International Airport. United Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and American Airlines all said that they would try to minimize the impact on customers and that they would work to reduce their schedules to 90% of their usual capacity in order to keep up with the FAA's order. The FAA has already faced a long-standing shortage of air traffic controllers, but the government shutdown is making the problem even worse. In response to the question if air travel reductions will continue into the future, Duffy said that the Transportation Department and the FAA will analyze data in order to decide. Duffy said the data will dictate what we do. Again, if the data goes in the wrong direction, could you see additional restrictions? Yes. If the data goes in the right direction, we will roll this back. But it's going to be data-driven, safety-driven.
Most of the controllers can navigate missing one paycheck. Virtually none of them can navigate missing two paychecks. That second paycheck comes this Tuesday. And so if this shutdown doesn't end relatively soon, the consequence of that is going to be more controllers don't come to work, and then we're going to have to continue to assess the pressure in the airspace and make decisions that may, again, move us from 10% to 15%, maybe to 20. I don't want to see that. Or, by the way, if controllers start coming to work and the pressure goes down, we can move those numbers in the other direction. Again, this is a moment-by-moment assessment. Again, doing all we can to make sure travelers are safe as they move through the airspace.
President Trump announced on Thursday agreements with Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk to significantly reduce the price of popular obesity treatments, including an upcoming medication. The weight loss drugs are part of a new generation of obesity medications known as GLP-1 receptor agonists. Access to the drugs has been limited because of their cost and insurance coverage. The current price of weight loss drugs ranges from approximately $1,000 to $1,350 per month before insurance reimbursements. The new price of the GLP-1 weight loss drug will drop to $245 per month, and it will be covered by Medicare for the first time starting in 2026. Under the agreement, starting in 2026, Medicare and Medicaid patients with obesity and other conditions such as pre-diabetes and heart failure will be able to obtain GLP-1 drugs at significantly reduced prices. Starting by April of next year, Medicare beneficiaries will pay $50 per month or less. These medications will also be sold directly to consumers at discounted prices through TrumpRx.gov, which is a website that the Trump administration plans to launch in January next year. This means that starting in mid-2026, Medicare will begin covering weight loss drugs for certain patients for the first time. Analysts suggest that this move could expand the market for such medications and prompt more private insurers to offer coverage. These agreements represent one of the most politically significant announcements to date in the Trump administration's efforts to curb high drug prices in the United States. As part of President Trump's most favored nation policy, he has announced deals with Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and EMD Serono to sell certain drugs directly to patients at discounted prices in exchange for waiving planned pharmaceutical tariffs. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. stated that this will have the greatest impact on the American public. All Americans, even those not covered by Medicaid or Medicare, will be able to access GLP-1 drugs at the same price. After the Trump administration agreed to pay half of the November SNAP benefits, the judge deemed it insufficient. A Rhode Island District Court judge ruled on Thursday that the Trump administration must pay approximately $9 billion by Friday to ensure full funding for November SNAP. Judge John McConnell Jr. said, "People have gone without for too long. Not making payments to them for even another day is simply unacceptable." McConnell stated, if the government were to pay only a portion of the funds, it would cause irreparable harm. The judge made this ruling because issuing partial SNAP benefits would require states to adjust their computer systems to process the reduced benefits. However, many states have outdated systems that would take weeks or even months to modify. Minnesota has determined that it will require at least 6 weeks to rewrite its computer system to process reduced benefits, while Pennsylvania will need at least 9 to 12 days to rewrite theirs. Last time, we mentioned that the government refuses to use tariff revenue and Section 32 funding to fund SNAP benefits. The judge ordered the administration to utilize Section 32 funding to cover the shortfall beyond contingency funds, thereby ensuring full benefit payments. The Section 32 funds were originally derived from customs revenues, and they were allocated for the Children's Nutrition Program. The government explained that if it were to use these funds, then the child nutrition program that is funded by that revenue might eventually run out of money. So the Trump administration immediately filed an appeal, and at this point it remains uncertain whether SNAP benefits can be fully distributed today as ordered by the judge. After hearing oral arguments in the case that is challenging President Trump's tariffs, the Supreme Court will take some time before issuing its ruling. Although President Trump expressed strong optimism about the outcome, he's already begun preparing his Game 2 plan.
We thought we did very well yesterday. We hope that we did. I think it would be devastating for our country, but I also think that we'll have to develop a Game 2 plan. We'll see what happens. Most people tell me we did very well.
President Trump said that he could consider other approaches, but that these would produce results more slowly. President Trump cited China's restriction on magnet exports as an example to illustrate tariffs' role as a diplomatic bargaining chip.
And we can do other things, but they're slow by comparison. Like as an example, with the 100%, I was able to do it instantaneously when we were threatened by the rare earths, as you know, the magnets. And I did it instantaneously. It was a matter of seconds. And it was a matter of seconds that I got a phone call, let's work this out. We would have had not nearly the defense that we had. It would be a shame. It would be somewhat catastrophic for our country, I have to be honest with you.
President Trump also argues that he's used tariffs to settle international conflicts. He said, look, I'm ending war because of these tariffs. Americans would have to fight in some of these wars. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who was in attendance at Wednesday's SCOTUS hearing, said he came away very, very optimistic. He told Fox Business that he thought that the plaintiffs who are challenging President Trump's use of a 1977 law to justify tariffs had almost embarrassed themselves. When asked by the media whether the government would have to refund billions of dollars in tariffs that have already been collected if the court ruled against it, Bessent replied, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it, but I'm confident we won't have to. Bessent likened the tariff policy to a gradually melting ice cube. Initially maintaining higher rates to protect U.S. industries, the tariffs would gradually decrease as production stabilized and trade balance recovered. He also criticized groups who are challenging the government's tariff policy, calling them utterly disgraceful and clearly ignorant of basic economics. However, even if the Supreme Court rules against the Trump administration, President Trump still has numerous options to continue imposing significant import tariffs. He could reinstate the tariff authority that he exercised during his first term, and he could also utilize other powers, including one dating back to the Great Depression. For a long time, the United States has possessed a powerful tool to combat countries that are deemed to engage in unreasonable, unfair, or discriminatory trade practices. This is Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. During President Trump's first term, he invoked Section 301 to impose broad tariffs on Chinese imports. And there's no cap on the scale of Section 301 tariffs. These tariffs are valid for 4 years, but can be extended. However, before imposing Section 301 tariffs, the U.S. Trade Representative must conduct an investigation and typically hold public hearings. Therefore, when targeting smaller countries, the costs often outweigh the benefits. In addition, President Trump may use the authority granted under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to impose tariffs on imported goods that he deems to be a threat to national security. Section 232 tariffs are not subject to legal restrictions, but they do require an investigation by the U.S. Department of Commerce. The investigation is conducted at the discretion of the government, which consequently holds significant control over the outcome. Since returning to the White House, President Trump has imposed Section 232 tariffs on automobiles, auto parts, copper, and lumber. In September, he imposed Section 232 tariffs on kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, and upholstered furniture. Furthermore, nearly a century ago, as the U.S. and global economies teetered on the brink of collapse, Congress passed the Tariff Act of 1930, imposing steep tariffs on imported goods. These tariffs became known as the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. Section 338 of the Act authorizes the president to impose tariffs of up to 50% on imports from countries that discriminate against U.S. businesses. No investigation is required, and there's no time limit on the duration of the tariffs. These tariffs were never actually implemented, though. However, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had indicated that if the Supreme Court rules that President Trump's tariffs under emergency powers are unlawful, then the administration was considering Section 338 as an alternative option. Yesterday, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, confirmed that it was hacked in a security incident and that it has taken actions to limit the damage, according to the Washington Post. Officials believe a foreign actor could be behind the attack. The hack risks insights into CBO staff communications with congressional lawmakers, since the hackers may have accessed emails as well as chat logs at the CBO. The announcement came after warnings from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. CISA warned in September that hackers had breached a federal agency by exploiting flaws in Cisco software. Last month, another alert warned that a state-linked hacker group had gained access to government networks through F5 systems. Yesterday, the Supreme Court allowed the Trump administration to enforce its policy requiring the sex designation on passports to be consistent with the passport holder's sex at birth. The Supreme Court order temporarily stays a June 17th order by the District Court in Massachusetts, which is now under appeal to the Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. The Supreme Court's decision in the case that was called Trump versus Orr was an unsigned order without comment. Justices Katanya Brown-Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor dissented against the decision. In the case, the Trump administration argued that the lower court's block has no basis in law or logic. The Trump administration also said that the lower court's order forces the administration to send passports to other countries that don't match a person's biological sex, which is against foreign policy and against basic scientific facts about sex. On the other hand, the respondents, which were represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, and other activist groups, argued that the policy was unconstitutional. They also said that forcing someone to use a passport that differs from his or her self-identified sex could expose him or her to psychological harm. The ACLU even said that an individual might be physically harmed if that person visited a country where transgenderism was illegal and his or her appearance did not match his or her passport's sex marker. The Supreme Court order stated, displaying passport holders' sex at birth no more offends equal protection principles than displaying their country of birth. In both cases, the government is merely attesting to a historical fact without subjecting anyone to differential treatment. A suspicious package was delivered to the Joint Base Andrews in Maryland yesterday that led to at least 7 people being hospitalized after it was opened. The package contained unknown white powder. A building on the base was evacuated after an individual opened the package. The package was opened in a room of an Air National Guard Readiness Center. The Air National Guard Readiness Center is a link between the National Guard Bureau and Air National Guard units in every state and territory. Joint Base Andrews stated, Joint Base Andrews first responders were dispatched to the scene, determined there was no immediate threats, and have turned the scene over to the Office of Special Investigations. An investigation is currently ongoing. Individuals who were taken to the hospital were treated for their symptoms and then released. Joint Base Andrews is the military base where VIPs such as the President, Vice President, and Cabinet Secretaries regularly travel for official business. Chinese fast food giant Shein opened its first physical store on Wednesday inside Paris's most prestigious department store, but on the same day the French government announced that it had initiated procedures to suspend Shein's online platform services. This follows strong protests in France after the company's website was found last Saturday to be selling sex dolls resembling children. French media released photos of childlike dolls that are sold on the platform, accompanied by explicit sexual innuendo in the captions, sparking widespread outrage. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot stated that Shein clearly violated European regulations. Also under investigation are e-commerce platforms including Temu, AliExpress, and Wish. France's consumer watchdog referred the 4 companies to prosecutors last Sunday. These cases have been referred to the Office des Mineurs in Paris. This office, which is part of the French police system, is specifically tasked with overseeing the protection of minors. On Monday, Shein announced a global ban on the sale of all sex dolls on its platform. Shein will also permanently suspend all seller accounts that are involved in the illegal sale of childlike dolls and strengthen the platform's control measures. French Foreign Minister Barrot, however, believes that these measures are insufficient. He stressed, "I want to go further by taking action at the European level." Barrot stated, "We have established all the relevant rules, but these rules are not being followed. Therefore, the European Commission must take action." The French Minister of Economy and Finance, Roland Lescure, and the Minister Delegate for Artificial Intelligence and Digital Affairs, Anne Lahanef, sent a letter late on Wednesday night to EU Commissioner for Digital Affairs, Henna Verkunen, to inform her of the events unfolding in France. They called on the EU Commission to launch an investigation without delay to determine why illegal goods were permitted to be listed and sold on the platform. A spokesperson for the EU Commission confirmed receipt of the letter and stated that the institution will conduct an assessment to determine next steps. Meanwhile, Shein's physical store opening in the historic French fashion landmark has drawn strong criticism from multiple parties, including Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo. Critics accuse Shein's business model of unfair competition and describe it as undermining France's domestic industry. Outside the store, dozens of protesters held signs condemning the brand's destructive, ultra-fast fashion business model, poor labor conditions, and massive environmental pollution. And some protesters briefly disrupted the opening ceremony. The French government is also taking proactive measures to curb the influence of ultra-fast fashion brands like Shein, Temu, and AliExpress. A proposed law aimed at curbing ultra-fast fashion could ban Shein from advertising in the country. The legislation specifically targets platforms that add over 1,000 new products daily. This year, Shein has been fined 3 times in France for violations including breaching cookie regulations, false promotions, misleading information, and failing to declare plastic microfibers, with total penalties amounting to 191 million euros. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.